The tennis world stood still. The air in the All England Club grew thick with disbelief as the impossible unfolded before our very eyes. It was a match that didn't just break records, it shattered hearts and redefined the very meaning of resilience. In a moment of sheer poetic justice, the tide turned so violently that it left a seasoned professional questioning everything she knew. This wasn't just a contest of rackets. It was a Shakespearean tragedy played out on grass, where heroes fell and new legends were born in the span of a single breath. And as the final ball sailed into the net, the deafening silence of 17,000 people spoke louder than any roar ever could, a silence that echoed the death of one dream and the birth of another. The towering Mexican, with her devastating forehand and relentless aggression, had come to Wimbledon with a point to prove. She was the veteran, the established force, and she was dismantling the young Alex Eala with surgical precision. It was a master class. The first set didn't just belong to Zarazúa. It was her kingdom, and she ruled it with an iron fist. She served aces that kissed the lines, she hit winners that left Eala flat-footed, and she marched to a stunning 6-0 victory. The commentators were already penning their tributes, writing off the Filipino as just another promising talent who had been handed a brutal lesson in the big leagues. Some were even whispering about a potential straight-sets victory that would be over in under an hour. But in the silence of her locker room, or perhaps in the fiery depths of her spirit, Eala was undergoing a transformation that no one could see coming. The second set began with the same one-sided story. Zarazúa was relentless, seizing an early break to go up 1-0 and then 2-1. The momentum was a tidal wave, and it was all flowing one way. The crowd, sensing an imminent victory for the Mexican, began to lose interest in the mismatch. But sport is a living entity, and it loves a dramatic twist. Eala, the girl with the weight of a nation on her shoulders, started playing with a freedom that was missing in the first set. She stopped playing the player and started playing the ball. She started swinging with reckless abandon, her elegant lefty forehand finally finding its range. The errors from Zarazúa began to creep in. A forehand sailed long, a backhand found the net. The unthinkable was happening. The 6-0 cakewalk was turning into a dogfight. Eala clawed her way back, breaking Zarazúa's serve and forcing a tiebreak. The roar of the crowd had shifted, now filled with the energy of a comeback that no one had predicted. You could see the panic flickering, and Zarazúa's iced confidence that had carried her through the first set was evaporating like morning mist under a burning sun. The Mexican warrior, once so fierce and untouchable, was now staring into the abyss of her own unraveling, and she could not look away. The tiebreak was a cauldron of pressure. This was the pivotal moment that would define the match. Renata Zarazúa, the veteran who had tasted victory, was suddenly playing not to win, but to survive. The confidence that had oozed from her every pore in the first set had evaporated, replaced by the cold, gripping anxiety of a player who could see her lead slipping away. Her legs felt heavy, her racket felt foreign in her hands, and every swing was accompanied by a silent prayer. She was drowning in a sea of her own doubt, and the lifeline she desperately needed was nowhere to be found. Alex Eala, meanwhile, was thriving on the chaos. Her shots were pure poetry, her movement a blur of speed and desperation. She was powered by the energy of a crowd that had been awakened to the possibility of an epic upset. This was no longer just a tennis match. This was a battle for survival, a fight for legacy, a war fought with every fiber of their being. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure was crushing both women under its unbearable weight. Then came the moment that will go down in Wimbledon infamy. With Eala leading 5-4 in the breaker, Zarazúa fought to stay in it. A ferocious rally ensued, with both players stretching the court to its limits. Eala sent a missile into the corner, forcing Zarazúa into a desperate slide. The Mexican got her racket on it, floating a lob that dropped dangerously close to the baseline. The linesman called it in. Eala, believing it was out, challenged. The stadium held its breath as the Hawkeye graphic illuminated the big screen. The ball was out by a fraction of an inch. The stadium erupted. Eala had won the point and the set. But it wasn't just the point. It was the psychological blow. Eala pumped her fist, a primal scream escaping her lips, a scream that seemed to carry the hopes of an entire nation. Zarazúa, the veteran, crumbled. She smashed her racket on the grass, receiving a code violation. The composure was gone. The shock at sub-U19 had officially begun. In that single moment, everything flipped. The hunter had become the hunted, and the crowd could feel the shift in the very air around them, a shift that would change everything. Zarazúa's face was a canvas of devastation. Her eyes told a story of a woman watching her world collapse in slow motion. The deciding set was no longer about technical skill. It was a battle of wills. Alex Eala, now high on the adrenaline of the comeback, was playing with a swagger that intimidated her opponent. Renata Zarazúa, on the other hand, was a shadow of her former self. The fluidity of her strokes was replaced by stiffness. The aggression was replaced by caution. Every shot she hit was laced with doubt, and every point she lost seemed to drain another ounce of life from her weary soul. She was a ghost of the warrior who had stormed the court just an hour earlier. Eala knew she had her on the ropes. She attacked the net with confidence. She painted the lines with her forehand, and she served with the conviction of a champion. The games flew by. The crowd, once favoring the veteran, was now solidly behind the underdog. Every point Eala won was greeted with a thunderous ovation, a wave of sound that seemed to push Zarazúa deeper into the abyss. It was a beautiful, brutal spectacle, a young lioness devouring the wounded queen. The energy in the stadium was electric, crackling with the tension of an impending miracle. The pressure became too much for Zarazúa. She started double faulting, her serve losing all its venom. Her face was a mask of despair as she looked to her coaching box for answers that never came. She was drowning, and there was no one to throw her a lifeline. It was a brutal spectacle to witness a seasoned professional being systematically dismantled, not by a superior player, but by a superior mentality. Eala, in contrast, was unshakable. She played each point with the focus of a monk, her eyes burning with a fierce determination. The weight of a nation, the Philippines, was on her shoulders, and she was carrying it with grace. She broke Zarazúa's serve not once, but twice, charging toward the finish line like a warrior who could smell victory. The final scoreline was damning, a testament to the role of psychology in sport. It was no longer about who was the better player. It was about who wanted it more, who was willing to bleed for it, and who had the stronger heart. Eala's heart was made of steel. Zarazúa's was crumbling to dust with every passing moment. The final point arrived, and it was almost a formality. Eala served with pinpoint accuracy, and a helpless Zarazúa sent a final return into the net. It was over. The reaction in the stadium was electric, a chaotic mix of euphoria and stunned silence. Alex Eala fell to her knees, her hands covering her face, the tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. She had done the impossible. She had written her name into the annals of Wimbledon history. Her body was trembling, her sobs audible even over the roaring crowd. But the drama wasn't over. The camera zoomed in on Eala's trembling frame, capturing the raw ecstasy of a dream realized. But on the other side of the net, a nightmare was unfolding. The contrast was gut-wrenching. One woman's greatest triumph was another woman's deepest tragedy. Renata Zarazúa stood frozen, her face a portrait of pure devastation. The journey to Wimbledon, the early dominance, the 6-0 victory in the first set, it all meant nothing. The dreams she had carried, the sacrifices she had made, the sleepless nights of training, all of it had crumbled in the span of a few devastating games. Her entire world had collapsed around her, and she stood in the ruins, utterly alone. In a moment of raw, unadulterated frustration, she walked to her chair, ignored her water bottle, and with a ferocity that shocked the crowd, she smashed her racket on the grass. The carbon fibers splintered, a fitting metaphor for her shattered dreams. She didn't just lose the match, she lost her composure, her reputation, and a piece of her soul on the most hallowed ground in tennis. The silence that followed her outburst was deafening. Even the cheering Eala fans paused to witness the spectacle of a broken warrior. It was a heartbreaking and shocking conclusion that left the commentators scrambling for words. In that moment, the entire stadium felt the weight of her tragedy, the cruel, unforgiving nature of a sport that gives everything and takes it all away in an instant. Tears welled in Zarazua's eyes as she walked off the court, her head hung in shame, her spirit crushed beyond repair. As Zarazua walked off the court, her head hung low. She was a symbol of a dream destroyed. But on the other side, Alex Eala was the embodiment of a dream realized. Her victory was more than just a win. It was a statement. It was a testament to the power of resilience, of believing in yourself when the entire world has written you off. She had faced a deficit that would have broken most players, and she had refused to quit. She had looked into the abyss of a 6-0 defeat and had stared it down with unwavering courage. She had risen from the ashes of humiliation to claim her place among the greats. Eala's post-match interview was a masterclass in humility. She spoke not of her own brilliance, but of the support of her country and her belief in the fight. She had done it for the Philippines. She had carried the flag of her nation on her back and planted it firmly on the grass of SW19. Her voice cracked with emotion as she dedicated the victory to every Filipino who had ever dared to dream. The shock at SW19 will not be remembered for the 6-0 set, or even the controversial line call. It will be remembered for the emotional collapse of one player and the spiritual ascension of another. For Renata Zarazúa, this defeat will be a scar that will take time to heal, a wound that will sting every time she steps onto a tennis court. For Alex Eala, it is a launching pad to superstardom, a moment that will define her career for years to come. The legacy of the Eala versus Zarazúa clash has been written in the history books as one of the greatest comebacks in Wimbledon history. It served as a stark reminder that in tennis, as in life, the match is never truly over until the final point is played. The crowd left speechless, but the world was left talking about the young Filipina who dared to dream, and the veteran who watched her own world fall apart. In the end, it wasn't just a match, it was a lesson in human spirit, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, the light of resilience can shine through. And as the sun set over SW19, it cast a golden glow on the new queen of the court, while the fallen warrior disappeared into the shadows, carrying the weight of a tragedy that will echo through tennis history forever. If you enjoyed more latest tennis news update and want to stay ahead of the biggest stories in the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to World Zone right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the action. See you in the next video.